अनिष्ठोपि दविष्ठोपि तथात्यंतम असन्नपि प्रत्यक्ष एव येनार्थस्तस्मै शब्दात्मने नमः. Friends, we are here for the 7th M.R. Yardi Memorial Lecture. And the program is like this. On behalf of the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, all will be welcomed by the chairman of our executive board, Mr. Bhupal Patwardhan. Then Aditi Saxena will say a few words about her grandfather, that is M.R. Yardi, and she will also introduce the speaker. And then it will be the talk by Swami Sarvapriyananda ji. After the talk, there shall be a brief question and answer session, which will be managed by Akshay Rao. And the question answers will be handled completely by him. And then there shall be a vote of thanks. So may I now request Mr. Bhupal Patwardhan, the chairman of our executive board, to kindly welcome all the guests.
Welcome all for this lecture series. M.R. Yardi was a EB chairman of our institute. Not only that, he wrote many books for institute. And I'm glad to tell that this year only, we reprinted 2 of his books, one about Mahabharata and one about Ramayana. And his 3rd book with us is of Patanjali Yoga Shastra. All these 3 books are still in very much demand. In fact, for last 2 or 3 months, we have sold 200 copies of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So also about Yoga Shastra. So much his popularity is and so much his knowledge was. At the same time, as for our digital initiative, Yardi Systems, Mr. Anand Yardi, Mr. Prakash Yardi, and Mr. Ashok Kotwal has helped our institute in a great way. Because of their initiative, we started digitization of our books which were 100 years old. And now that initiative has gone so far that our media presence is quite nice. I'm glad to tell that last month, our impression on Twitter has gone to 4 million people. So that's the way Yardi Systems, Yardi family has helped our institute in its educational work. So we are glad, we are happy, and we are very much thankful for this help. And we always see M.R. Yardi as a pioneer for our institutional works. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I now request Aditi to kindly take over.
Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to say a few words in honor of my grandfather as an introduction to the 7th M.R. Yardi Memorial Lecture, which is also taking place on the 21st anniversary of his passing. M.R. Yardi, or Mote Baba as we called him, was born in a small village called Supa, which bordered Maharashtra and Karnataka. He was an excellent student, winning the Jagannath Shankar Scholarship in Sanskrit, excelling in university, and standing first in the very competitive Indian Civil Service examination in 1940. These accomplishments preceded an illustrious career in the government of Maharashtra and ultimately the central government of India, where he served as finance secretary until his retirement in 1974, which coincidentally is also the year of my birth. Upon retirement, Mote Baba devoted his time to the study of yoga, the Mahabharata, and other Sanskrit texts. It is also during this time that I came to know him as my grandfather. As a grandfather, he was affectionate and kind, but not given to idle chatter. Much of what I have learned from him was not a result of conversations with him, but rather a direct observation of his daily practices, his habits, and his way of life. The phrase actions speak louder than words could not be more appropriate here, as the actions of Mote Baba and also his wife and my grandmother, Anasuya Yardi, have had a profound and lasting impact on me, my brothers, our cousins, and the broader family. My grandparents practiced yoga in its many disciplines, from jnana yoga through the study of scriptures and religious texts, to bhakti yoga with daily morning walks to the local temple and artis at home with fresh flowers, karma yoga in their service to family and society, and ultimately Raj yoga through daily meditation grounded by discipline and routine. While I grew up geographically far from their home in India, I drew both comfort and awe from the way that they lived their life. And while their lifestyle may seem unattainable with the constant distractions and competing pressures of modern life, it serves as a perpetual guide to living according to the principles of yoga and Vedanta. These priceless gifts are compounded by the written texts Mote Baba has authored, which are not only the products of his scholarship, but also serve to illuminate the origins and concepts of foundational Vedanta scripture. This heritage bestowed by Mote Baba is lasting and precious, not only to his family, but also to the institutions where he served. And for this, we are forever grateful. The Yardi family is also very grateful that Swami Sarvapriyananda will be speaking on this occasion. It is a great honor for me to introduce Swami Sarvapriyananda, who has led the Vedanta Society of New York since 2017. Swamiji joined the Ramakrishna Order in 1994 and has served the mission in various capacities, including as an acharya in the Monastic Training Center at the Ramakrishna Mission headquarters in Belur Mutt, and also as an assistant minister in the Vedanta Society of Southern California. Swamiji has also served as inaugural fellow at the Harvard Divinity School from 2019 to 2020. And in addition to these distinctions, Swamiji's audiences span the globe, particularly on YouTube, where his videos and lectures have garnered millions of views. Our sincerest and humblest gratitude to you, Swamiji, for giving this lecture today in honor of my grandfather, M.R. Yardi.
Thanks, Aditi, and also Mr. Patwardhan. And may I now request Swami Sarvapriyananda ji to deliver his 7th M.R. Yardi Memorial Lecture on the topic Meditation in Advaita and Yoga, Aparokṣānubhūti, verses 100 to 144. Swamiji, please.
Thank you, Srinand Bapaji. Am I audible to everybody? I'm audible, right?
Yes, Swamiji.
Right. Thank you, Patwardhan ji. Thank you, Aditi ji. My gratitude to the Bhandarkar Institute and to the Yardi family for giving me this unique honor of being able to deliver the 7th M.R. Yardi Memorial Lecture. Let me start with a chant. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityur Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. As I was saying, it's a great honor to be invited to deliver this lecture. I also have Yardi ji's books in my collection, including one on the Brahma Sutras, which is not so well known. I'm so glad to know that his works are being preserved and digitized and reprinted, and they are also selling so well, which we just heard about the new publications or reprints of the Ramayana and Mahabharata books. It is on the basis of this that a nation is built. We are celebrating the 75 years, Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years of our independence. As a nation, a new nation, but also we must remember that we are a very ancient nation, one of the oldest civilizations in the world, probably the oldest living civilization in the world. And it is our ancient heritage, which is preserved in a number of institutes, but particularly in the Bhandarkar Institute. It is on that basis, rooted in the past and looking to the future, as somebody described Swami Vivekananda, that is the way in which we shall build our future, the future India. Today, I have selected a text, Adi Shankaracharya's Aparokṣānubhūti. This we know is a text of Advaita Vedanta. But the reason I've chosen this for today's talk is interesting because meditation in the whole world today, in India, and especially here in the West, people are very interested in meditation. And this text has a unique take, a unique perspective on meditation. What that is, I will talk to you a little bit about now before I enter into the text. So all these ancient traditions, philosophical traditions of India, the Niyama, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Purva Mimamsa and Uttara Mimamsa, of which Advaita Vedanta is one stream, but also Jainism and several schools of Buddhism and many other philosophical schools in India, like the Tantra schools, the Shaiva schools, Kashmiri Shaivism, for example. All of them had a common feature. They were all what one might call moksha shastras. This was the project of ancient India, that how can we overcome human suffering? How can one reach fulfillment? And this was the goal, and many names were given to it: moksha, nirvana, mukti, kaivalya, apavarga, and so on. And conceptions of this freedom from suffering, attainment of fulfillment, the philosophical conceptions were multiple. So there were a wide range of views, and there were extensive debates in ancient India about this subject. And one of the ways in which these traditions attempted to reach moksha would be meditation. Now, the way these traditions looked at meditation differs. So today we shall compare two major traditions: the yoga tradition, of which Yardi ji was very fond, and his Patanjali Yoga Sutras is a classic work, and also the Advaita Vedanta tradition as represented in this little text, Aparokṣānubhūti. The role and nature of meditation in these two systems is different. How is it different, and why this text is important? That's what I will focus on. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, we find that meditation is a means of calming the mind. Yoga is defined as yoga chitta vritti nirodha. In the second sutra of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the definition of yoga itself is samadhi, or the culmination of meditation, the cessation of the movements of the mind. So our thoughts, feelings, emotions, perceptions, when these are calmed down, that is called yoga. When the mind is deeply focused, deeply absorbed, that is yoga. What happens? Why should we do that? In the third sutra, Patanjali says the purpose of meditation: tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. At that time, the witness consciousness is recognized or is in its real nature. Now, what does that mean? Swami Vivekananda, in his commentary on the Yoga Sutras in Raja Yoga, by the way, that book Raja Yoga, which is a classic commentary on the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, was actually published from here, where I am, in the Vedanta Society of New York. So that was Swami Vivekananda's first book here. And there, commenting on the third sutra, Swami Vivekananda describes a lake. Imagine a vast lake where the waves are calmed, there is no movement of the water, and the water is pure. So when there is no movement of the water and the water is pure, one can see right through to the bottom of the lake. Exactly in the same way, if you compare the mind to a lake, when the movements of the mind are calmed through meditation, through yoga, and the mind is pure, then one sees the nature of the self. What is the point of seeing this nature of the self? The self in yoga, which is allied to Sankhya, is pure consciousness. It is not material, it's not mental, so it's not the body, it's not the mind, It is consciousness or awareness itself. And in itself, it's free of all problems. You see, if all the problems are in the material body or in the mind, and if I can actually see that I am not the body and mind, in that case, I will recognize that my real nature is always free of problems. So this freedom, the freedom of the self, of the real self, freedom in the sense that it transcends material problems or mental problems. This is the freedom that Patanjali Yoga aims at. So once I see this insight, which the yoga calls Viveka Khyati, that the separation of consciousness and nature, Prakriti and Purusha Viyoga, this will be affected by this insight that I am the ever pure, ever shining, problem-free consciousness and the witness of nature. And nature manifests as mind, body, and external world. So this is freedom. Now, suppose we do not do this yoga, then what will happen? The fourth sutra says, the vritti sarupyam itaratra, that if I do not distinguish between consciousness and mind, then the consciousness becomes involved, mixed up as it were with the mind, with the processes of the mind. Under normal circumstances, what happens is that the activities of our mind become superimposed on the consciousness, on the self. And so if there is anger, for example, I feel I have become angry. If there is misery or unhappiness, I feel I have become unhappy. So in this way, I get mixed up with the activities of the mind, and that causes suffering, or the suffering is appropriated or superimposed on the witnessing self. So this is the normal problem, and the way out of this is to calm the mind down, and the way of calming the mind, focusing the mind, is through meditation. So this is the approach, the paradigm of meditation in Patanjali Yoga. Now, in Advaita Vedanta, meditation has a different role. Advaita Vedanta is preeminently the path of knowledge, although it is only fair to mention that just as we saw right now, though we see yoga, Patanjali Yoga, as a way of meditation, but the meditation is actually supposed to lead to knowledge. So ultimately, it is through knowledge, also in Patanjali Yoga and Sankhya, that one attains freedom. In fact, one interesting thing is, most of the ancient Indian philosophies were knowledge systems, in the sense that they were looking for knowledge. Even Nyaya, Vaisheshika, they were all, and most of the schools of Jainism and Buddhism, they're all looking for spiritual insight, which would lead to freedom. But yes, in the Patanjali Yoga, it is meditation which is the primary means of attaining this knowledge. Now, the difference is this, the interesting difference is, in Advaita Vedanta, in the path of the Upanishads as interpreted by Shankaracharya, the primary method is not meditation. The primary method to attain knowledge is an inquiry, vichara, which is called Vedanta Vichara, an inquiry into the teachings of the Upanishads. So that's why this is called Mimamsa. Mimamsa means hermeneutics, scriptural interpretation, but a very pointed and precise, purposeful scriptural interpretation, which is Mimamsa means Pujita Vichara, reverential inquiry into the teachings of the text. By an inquiry, by Vichara, one comes to see that I am Brahman, I am existence, consciousness, bliss. We are already Brahman. You don't have to become Brahman. You are already Brahman. You are existence, consciousness, bliss, Satchidananda, already free of sufferings, already beyond the travails of samsara. But somehow we do not know it, and we superimpose the samsara appearance on the self, on the Atman, on Brahman, and then we feel that we are bound in samsara. The moment we realize that we are Satchidananda, when that aham brahmasmi, ityakara vritti, the knowledge arises in the mind that I am Brahman, this sets me free from samsara. But this knowledge arises not by meditation. This is an interesting thing. It arises by inquiry into the text. Then what is the method? Method is Shravana Manana Nididhyasana. Hearing or studying the text under a competent teacher, that's primary in Advaita Vedanta. Then thinking about it, reasoning about it, cogitation about the text. So the purpose of hearing is to get the knowledge. The purpose of reasoning is to clear all doubts, what is called asambhavana. That means the text is telling me that I am Brahman. And my immediate reaction would be, this is impossible. How can I be Brahman? And so then we reason it out until we come to see, yes, now I not only know what the text is telling me, but I also understand it. Getting the information and understanding the two different things. Getting the information, getting the teachings, that is Shravana. Shravana gives us that. And clarity in understanding by removing all doubts, it is asangdigdha, without any doubt I understand it, that is given by Mananam. Now, Nididhyasana is Vedantic meditation. So what is the purpose of meditation? If meditation is not meant to give us knowledge, then what is the purpose of meditation here? Often it so happens that after Vedantic study, one may say that I have understood what is being taught here. I have got clarity about it, but there'll always be a but at the end. But I don't feel that it's a living knowledge for me. I don't feel that it is practical for me. It seems theoretical, philosophical. The goal was to transform life. The goal was to attain fulfillment. The goal was to say I've gone beyond suffering. I cannot honestly say I've gone beyond suffering. So the knowledge has not really given the desired result. So in Vedanta, this is called Viparita Bhavana. For certain reasons, which we will not go into now, it is quite possible that the old tendencies are still there in the mind. And so we sort of automatically react to the ups and downs, the sorrows and sufferings in life, exactly in the way that we were doing earlier. So the knowledge has not made that much of a difference. So in order to absorb that knowledge, in order to assimilate that knowledge, in order to live that knowledge, we need Vedantic meditation. So Nididhyasana is not for actually giving the knowledge itself, which already has been acquired through Shravana, which has been clarified through Manana. But Nididhyasana is meant for assimilating that knowledge, so that at the end of it, I can honestly say, yes, I am Brahman. I can say with Shankaracharya, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. I am beyond all sorrow with ups and downs of life. I feel that and I get the benefit of it. So this is the unique purpose of Nididhyasana. And in many Vedantic texts, you will find Nididhyasana is discussed in different ways. In this book, Aparokṣānubhūti, and the book I am using is translated by a senior monk of the Ramakrishna order, Swami Vimuktanandaji. In this book, at the end, there is an extensive discussion of Nididhyasana, Vedantic meditation. And why I selected this portion was, here Shankaracharya has used the terminology of yoga. The purpose of meditation in yoga and Vedanta is different. The techniques are different. The whole approach is different. And yet, purposefully, Shankaracharya has selected the terminology of yoga, of the Yoga Sutras and Hatha Yoga terminology, and completely changed, I would say even subverted the meanings and given it an Advaitic meaning. Each term, which is very well known to all of us, pranayama, asana, dharana, dhyana, all of these things are well known in Patanjali Yoga terminology, and yet Shankaracharya takes those very terms and completely changes the meaning. So it's a very unique thing. And sometimes you will find that he has he's humorous, even little mischievous humor is there. So for example, we know that, for example, posture, sitting. So it to sit straight. And even Bhagavad Gita, Krishna teaches Arjuna that samakaya shiro grivam, the body and the spine, the back and the head should be held in one line when you sit in meditation. And Shankaracharya says, being continuously centered in Brahman, I am Brahman, that is the posture. And sitting straight, stiff like this, he says that's like a dried stump of a tree standing straight. So he makes fun of that. Another place he makes fun, for example, is pranayama. Pranayama, we know the yogic pranayama is restraining the breath, breathing in, that is puraka, then holding the breath, exhaling. Kumbhaka is holding the breath, exhaling is rechaka. So you've taken the breath, then you hold it for a certain count, kumbhaka, and then you release it. And then you take it in again, hold it, and then release it. So that's one complete pranayama. This is a classic pranayama, and varieties of this are there. And Shankaracharya, here he says that actually pranayama is, you breathe out means you recognize the falsity of the world appearance. You breathe in, it means that you stay in the awareness, I am Brahman. And then hold it. Holding the breath means staying in that state, in that awareness that I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. Then what about the yogic pranayama? Breathing in, holding the breath, and then releasing the breath, using this technique which one uses in yogic pranayama. So quite mischievously, Shankaracharya, humorously, he says that kind of pranayama, this kind of pranayama is this grana pidanam, that is torture of the nose, because you block the nose like this. He says that is just torture of the nose. So this is humorous, but he's not actually criticizing yoga. He's actually not showing that yoga is lower and Advaita is higher, because at the end of this discussion, towards the end of the discussion on Nididhyasana, he says the yogic meditation is very helpful for beginners. It is foundational. On that, these are advanced practices. So that's why he has made this comparison. So that's why for us, when we are interested in yoga and interested in Advaita, this particular section, when Adi Shankaracharya brings both together comparatively, is a section of particular interest to us. I think Yardi ji would have enjoyed this immensely. And this comparison is not just for the enjoyment of learned people, but also it gives us an insight into the heart of yoga, into the heart of Advaita Vedanta. So let me just read the text a little bit in the time that is remaining, and I'll comment upon it. So this here is an extensive discussion of Nididhyasana, which goes from verse number 102 actually to almost the end of the book. So in 102 and 103 in Aparokṣānubhūti, Shankaracharya outlines 15 steps of Nididhyasana, 15 steps, 15 practices of Nididhyasana. Let me read it out. Yamo hi niyamastyago maunam deshascha kalata asanam mula bandhascha deha samyam cha driksthitihi prana sanyamanam chaiva pratyaharascha dharana atmadhyanam samadhischa proktannangani vaikramat. 15 steps. What are the steps? He says yama, that is I will read out the translation, but first let me just enumerate the 15 steps. Yama, niyama, tyaga, maunam, desha, kala, asana, mula bandha, deha samya, driksthitihi. Then prana sanyamanam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. 15 steps. What are they? Control of the senses, control of the mind, renunciation, silence, space, proper time, posture of the body, restraining, there's a yogic locks, the mula bandha, the equipoise of the body. So asana is the seat, and posture is actually the deha samyam. Then the focusing of the vision, which is the driksthiti. Then control of the prana, the vital forces. Withdrawing the mind from external engagement, pratyahara. Then meditation, focus, dharana. Then dhyana, which is real proper meditation. And finally, samadhi. Notice here, he has borrowed not only the exact terms used in the Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali, the well-known yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, dharana, dhyana, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, but also a number of other terms from Hatha Yoga, and made a system of 15 practices. Now, as we shall see, in the yogic approach, all 15 are necessary. In order to attain samadhi, one must not only have the moral practices of yama and niyama, but also we must know how to sit firmly. We must have a proper time and place for meditation. We must have then the yogic lock, the deha samya. All of these are necessary. But another unique feature of Shankaracharya's presentation is, from the Advaitic perspective, it's not that all 15 are necessary. We will see soon, if you see just sampling of a few of these practices, in every one of the 15 basically is pointing to one thing only, and that is the Brahmakara Vritti, that Aham Brahmasmityakara Vritti, that I am Brahman. This realization, these are just 15 different ways of staying with that realization. So any one of these can lead to the effects of nididhyasana, enlightenment and assimilation of that knowledge, or more than one of these. Also, another thing is that yogic meditation is possible when you are sitting and cut off from the world. So it is like eyes closed meditation. You cannot walk about, drive, or give lectures like this and say that I'm practicing Patanjali yoga meditation. Not possible. But Advaitic meditation, nididhyasana, as we shall see, is possible when you sit quietly and withdraw from the world in meditation, but is also possible in the midst of action. The Bhagavad Gita says, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi. In the 4th chapter, we find this teaching that Brahma Karma Samadhi, in the midst of action, one may be centered in the realization that I am Brahman. With eyes closed, I am Brahman. With eyes open, I am Brahman. That makes no difference. So this is another unique feature. Let me give a sampling of what Shankaracharya means. So 15 practices. The first one, just like Patanjali Yoga Sutra, Yama and Niyama are the first practices. Let's start with the Yama. I'm reading the 104th verse. Sarvam Brahmeti Vijnanad Indriyagrama Sanyamaha Yamoyam iti samprokto abhyasaniyo muhurmuhu. The restraint of all the senses by means of such knowledge, all this is Brahman, is rightly called Yama, which should be practiced again and again. Now, immediately we notice our first reaction is, but this is not Yama. That you see that everything is Brahman and you stay there again and again in that realization, that is Yama. But the Yama that we are familiar with, the word is from the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the first limb of the Ashtanga Yoga. Their Yama is very clear. It means Ahimsa, it means Satya, it means Brahmacharya, it means Aparigraha, it means Asteya, it means the practice of non-violence, the practice of truth, and the practice of self-control, especially celibacy, is a practice of non-stealing and the non-acceptance of too much gifts or possessions. Now, what is the relationship between these? So in Patanjali Yoga, the moral practices are foundational for meditation. One might think, what do the two have to do with each other? In these days, meditation, even in yoga studios here, yoga schools are called yoga studios in New York, and very popular here. But mostly meditation here is combined with the physical asanas and pranayama, and the purpose is not kaivalya, not moksha, not God realization. The purpose is welfare, that physical well-being. There's a term now, wellness. So physical wellness and mental, emotional wellness. So asana is good for that, for our health. Pranayama is good for that, and meditation is also good for that, good for a peace of mind, a little stress busting, and so on. Not the actual purpose of meditation, which is mentioned in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. If God realization, enlightenment is the purpose of meditation, in that case, that kind of meditation definitely requires a moral basis. Deep concentration, deep focus is not possible if we lead hypocritical lives or immoral lives. One sadhu in India, he jokingly said that black money par asan bichaoge to kya dhyan hoga Mahatma Seth ji, he says to some person who asks, Don't talk to me about Satya and all that. Teach me how to sit asana and pranayama and meditation. So the yogi said, "Aap black money par asana bichaoge, that you will put your asana on undeclared income, black money. So then dhyan hoga kya, Seth ji? Will you be able to meditate?" So moral practices are absolutely necessary for deep meditation. For any kind of spiritual life, morality is the basis. And for that, the first thing is non-violence. Hurting others by speech, by thought, of course, by action. Kaya manavakya. If we cause violence to others, our mind also will be affected. One cannot meditate deeply. If there is this vritti inside in our mind, if there is hatred or anger against others. So non-violence. Then truth. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, in Kali Yoga, the greatest tapasya is truth. Kolite shattoi tapasya. Satya is the greatest spiritual practice, truth. And then brahmacharya, which is control of the senses, not indulgence in sensuous enjoyment. The more the mind flows outwards to enjoy the world through sight and smell and taste and touch and sound, the more the mind will be involved in the world. Very difficult to focus such a mind. So brahmacharya. And then aparigraha. One might think not accepting gifts. Why is that important? The more we accumulate things in the world, the more our mind is divided into those things. We may not think, we may not understand it, but when we try to meditate, we will realize. For example, a very good example for modern people is mobile phone. So it is so distracting. It's very damaging for focus. Every few minutes, we want to see what is there on the phone. Especially when you sit for meditation, you will see a little bit of the mind will be pulled towards, I want to see what is on the phone. And people become uncomfortable if the phone is switched off, as if they have lost something. There is a term for that. FOMO, fear of missing out, as if you're missing out something. You're not missing out anything. It's mostly nonsense, but the mind has been trained in that way to always keep looking at the phone. So like that, if you have too many possessions, the mind gets attached to those possessions. Therefore, minimize acceptance of gifts. And of course, asteya, not taking what is not one's own. Again, that can be very deeply distracting. It's impossible to meditate if one feels that I have been dishonest. Now, this is the general idea. These are the 5 practices of yama. Mahatma Gandhiji in one place, he writes very interesting observation that some of the freedom fighters at that time, when they were told that you have to observe satya, ahimsa, brahmacharya, said, all right, satya, ahimsa is all right. Why brahmacharya? Most of them were householders. What is the connection between politics and freedom fighter and brahmacharya? Mahatma Gandhiji writes, and I found this very wonderful insight. He says, they don't understand that these people, they think that my ahimsa is some kind of strategy. It is not a strategy. It's a spiritual practice. And it is much more effective if you practice these 5 together rather than trying to practice it separately. Try to be truthful and don't practice brahmacharya or non-violence. You will find truth also is impossible. Try to be non-violent and don't practice brahmacharya or truth. You will find you will end up hurting people. So all of these go together. It's actually almost impossible to practice them separately. But all of them, satya, ahimsa, brahmacharya, asteya, aparigraha, all of them, if you practice together, they mutually support each other and they become practical. And yet, Adi Shankaracharya, when we look at this verse, instead of going down this route at all, he says, Sarvam Brahmeti Vijnanat. By the realization that all is Brahman, all the fruits of yama will come to you. Yamo ayamiti prokta, samprokta. This is said. The wise people say that the real yama is not individually trying to tell the truth, trying not to indulge in sensuousness, trying not to hurt others. Instead of that struggle, just stay in the awareness that it is all Brahman. Now, one point here. This is an advanced practice. Already this practitioner, the Advaitin, has thoroughly studied Vedanta, has completely understood Vedanta, so that understanding is, the clarity is already there. It is not for the beginner. If for the beginner, if you say Sarvam Brahma iti Vijnanat, by the knowledge that all is Brahman, then that beginner does not have that knowledge. So that beginner cannot practice it. Here, Adi Shankaracharya is basing it on the Ishopanishad. Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagattena tyaktena bhunjita ma gridhakasya svidhanam. Cover everything by the Lord, Isha, by the Lord, by Satchidananda. Cover means, Shankaracharya in his commentary on the Ishopanishad, he says, cover means actually to discover. And discover means to uncover. It is actually Brahman is here in all of our experiences. Kenopanishad says, Pratibodha viditam matam. In every experience, Brahman is being revealed, but we don't see it. So we have to discover it. And how do you discover? You have to uncover it. There's this veil of the activities of the body, mind, our ignorance. So this ignorance is the veil which does not allow us to recognize what we are truly. And this ignorance is removed by Jnana Yoga, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, especially by Shravana. And once you discover this, Ishavasyam idam sarvam, Brahman alone, Satchidananda Brahman alone pervades everything. That means everything that we experience is nothing other than Brahman appearing through the lens of Maya, appearing through time, space, and causation. When we see this, then the effect will be the yamas, the 5 yamas. Why should I tell an untruth? You see, Satya, instead of struggling to tell the truth, for what purpose should I tell an untruth? I am centered in Brahman, which is truth itself, Sat itself. After all, why do people do wrong things? It's either out of temptation or out of fear. I want something so much that I will overstep the bounds of morality, overstep the bounds of ethics, and do something unethical. Or I'm afraid of the consequences, so I will not tell the truth. These are the 2 reasons why people, raga dvesha, intense likes or dislikes, fear, aversion, or temptation. Because of this, people overstep morality, or they commit violence, or they break the vow of brahmacharya, or they tell an untruth. But if I see Brahman everywhere, I am the one Brahman everywhere, so I attain Purnatva. There is nothing beyond my existence. I'm not the body and mind. I am existence, consciousness, bliss. And there is nothing beyond that. So what shall I desire? What can tempt me? Not only that, I am this immortal, indestructible Brahman. What can destroy me? What should I be afraid of? So I'll be set free from temptation, set free from fear. And therefore, immorality is not possible for me. So that's why he says, the control of the senses, yama, it comes by being centered in the awareness that all is Brahman. So this first line of the Ishopanishad, again Gandhiji says, if all of Hinduism were to disappear tomorrow, but the first line of the first verse of Ishopanishad, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat, if that one remains, then all of Hinduism will remain. That's such a powerful insight. Here Adi Shankaracharya is saying, all our struggle to lead a moral life, all our struggle to become spiritual, in one instant, in one insight itself, it can be attained that all is Brahman. So this is how he changes. Whatever you're trying to do by yama, be non-violent, be truthful, be self-controlled, not accumulate money or wealth through gifts or through stealing. All of these moral practices, this becomes natural if you're centered in Brahman, if you stay with the idea or the realization, the feeling that all is Brahman. Then, Niyama. In Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Niyama is 5 more practices. 5 practices yama and 5 practices niyama. Yama, you will notice, are negative in the sense that don't do these wrong things. Don't tell lies, don't commit violence, don't go into sensual enjoyment, don't accumulate wealth, don't steal. Don't, negative. but there are some positive practices. So those 5 are put by Patanjali under Niyama. And those are well known. The Shaucha, cleanliness, Santosha, contentment, and then the Tapaha, austerities, and then Swadhyaya, which is technically it is Vedic chanting, but you can generally interpret as study of scriptures. And then Swadhyaya, and then Ishvara Pranidhana, worship of God in whatever your tradition, whatever form you worship God. So these are the 5 practices given by Patanjali. Now, these 5 practices are supposed to purify the mind, make it ready, foundation for meditation. So cleanliness, we all know from childhood we have been taught cleanliness is next to godliness. So Shaucha, there it means external cleanliness, whether it is our surroundings, our clothes, our body, our internal cleanliness, pure speech. I remember reading Swami Ranganathanandaji. He was the 13th president of our order, very eminent Vedantist, spiritual teacher. So he says in his reminiscences, when he was a little boy, one day he came home from school and said a bad word which he had learned. And his mother immediately scolded him and said, Saraswati dwells on the tongue. If you use foul language, then Saraswati will not dwell on your tongue, will never come on your tongue anymore. And so from that day onwards, he gave up using abusive language or foul language. You see, this cleanliness of speech also, and cleanliness of thought. So bhava samshuddhi, cleanliness in the emotions, in the thinking, in the speech, and physical cleanliness. So all of that is shaucha. Then santosha, contentment. Contentment means I will do as well as I can in the external world, career, family, physical health, and maintain oneself, finances, all of these things. Whatever my duties are, whatever is possible reasonably, I will do that. And then be contented about it, not driven by greed. So here I am in New York, very close proximity to Wall Street. So the whole motivation is how soon you can become a millionaire or billionaire. And that's the whole purpose of life. So there is a slogan about New York, about Manhattan, the city that never sleeps. But why not sleeping? Why is it sleepless? Because ambition, greed, to the extent that it leads to the ability to maintain yourself and your family, it is fine. But if you are a spiritual seeker, then one must draw a line there, Lakshman Rekha there, don't step over that. So santosha, contentment regarding one's external, the samsara. But there should be discontentment regarding God realization. One should want that Sri Ramakrishna would weep every day, that one more day has passed, but I have not been able to get the vision of the Divine Mother. So divine discontent must be there in the heart, but discontentment, santosha about the world. If one is discontented about the world, I need more, other people are getting rich, I need more money, or such and such person is misbehaving with me. Yes, these external things about money, relationships, one must have a kind of contentment. And then austerity. Austerity, that means things like a little fasting, or simplicity in one's personal room and clothes, and minimizing external comforts. What is the reason for that? The more we give concession to the body and the mind, the more difficult the body and mind are to control. So really, the body mind do not need much. You will see, let alone spirituality, if somebody is a scholar, is like in the Bhandarkar Institute, and I know a lot of scholars are here, if you're intensely studying and thinking, your lifestyle itself will become quite austere. You will not be so bothered about what you are wearing, what kind of fancy food you are getting, or your fancy accommodation. No, minimum of comfort, if it is there, then you would want to be left alone in quietness and in order to focus on your work. Whether you are a scholar or artist, or say a scientist, research scientist, any higher mental pursuit requires austerity, external austerity. You may not practice it deliberately, it will automatically come to your life. So there is a connection between intense mental activity and external austerity, simplicity. So the old slogan again, the high thinking and simple living. So austerity does not mean suffering. Just suffering itself is not equal to austerity. But if we consciously, deliberately impose that suffering on ourselves in order to get control of body mind, then that becomes tapaha, austerity. And then swadhyaya is engaging the mind in study. Technically, it was traditionally, it was the chanting of one's Vedic shakha, the Vedic chanting of the branch one was supposed to chant. But you can take it as regular scriptural study and a little worship of God in some form regularly, a little ritualistic, a small puja, maybe just offering little flowers and incense and chanting a few mantras. Ishvara pranidhana, that must be a component. That is a very important basis for further progress in meditation. But now look at what Adi Shankaracharya does. He completely changes the meaning. This is Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Adi Shankaracharya, what he does here is Sajatiya pravahascha vijatiya tiraskritihi niyamo hi paranando niyamat kriyate buddhaihi. The continuous flow of only one kind of thought to the exclusion of all other thoughts is called niyama, which is verily the supreme bliss and is regularly practiced by the wise. What is niyama? Shaucha, tapa, santosha. No. He says, sajatiya pravaha vijatiya tiraskriti. This realization which you have got through Vedantic study, and remember, this is from verse 102 onwards we are doing. Before that, the whole teaching of Vedanta has been given, that how I am not body and mind, how I am the witness consciousness, and this witness consciousness is the fundamental reality in which the entire universe appears. So, aham brahmasmi, this teaching has already been given. Now you stay with that teaching. Sajatiya vritti pravaha means the same one kind of vritti should go on. Normally what happens is our mind is continuously breaking out into waves, thoughts. And each movement of the mind is called a vritti. And each vritti has a vishaya, content. Every thought has a content. Every bit of awareness it's aware of something. So when I am talking to you now, I'm aware of the screen, or I'm aware of the book. You're listening to me, you are aware of my voice. So that is the content of the vritti. What is the thought about? And this content keeps changing. Right now, I may take a cup of coffee. The content will be the taste of the coffee or the warmth of the coffee. Next, I might listen to a lecture. The content of my vritti will be the words of the speaker. Next, I may read a book or will be driving. The content will be the action of driving and coordinating the car in the middle of a busy road. So all of these are vrittis, and each vritti has a separate and different contents, vishaya. In meditation, the effort is to make the vishaya same. Vrittis will keep coming one after another, but each vritti, each succeeding vritti should be about the same vishaya. So suppose somebody is chanting Om Namah Shivaya, one mantra, Om Namah Shivaya. So first vritti, Om Namah Shivaya. Second vritti, Om Namah Shivaya. It should not be disturbed by other vrittis. Automatically disturbances will start coming. And the mosquito is coming and biting me, or it is too hot, or there is an ache in my leg. So these little separate vrittis will come. Now you have to pull the mind back to Om Namah Shivaya. This is called Sajatiya Vritti Pravaha, having a flow of vrittis of the same topic. Vrittis are different, coming one after another, but the same Vishaya. Vijatiya Tiraskriti. If the vritti goes towards Vishaya, becomes different, it goes towards the body or to the external environment. Consciously, deliberately pull the mind back, make the vritti about Om Namah Shivaya or whatever you want to focus on. Here, what are we focusing on? The understanding that I am awareness. Whatever thought comes, whatever sense perception comes, whatever impressions come from the world, the awareness, we should focus it back on. I am the witness consciousness, the Chidananda Rupa Shivoham. That is called Sajatiya. of the same kind. Now, uniquely, he has not said it is the same vritti. You should, or the same vishaya. You should. It's not like repeating a mantra. There is a unique difference between this and repeating a mantra. Mantra is a formula, a sacred formula which I repeat again and again. But here, Adi Shankaracharya does not mean that. You should not repeat Aham Brahmasmi or Chidananda Rupa Shivoham like a mantra. That is not Advaita Vedanta. It is not Nididhyasana. It is more like staying with the knowledge. For example, right now I know I am sitting on the chair. This is knowledge for me. It's not a mantra. If I am aware of that one after another, every vritti is here I am sitting on the chair. Sarvapriyananda sitting on the chair. Here, this chair, I am on the chair. All of this is knowledge. At every moment, it's not a belief. I'm just noticing the reality. This is a good way of putting it. If I notice the reality, I am Brahman. Again and again and again. This is what he means by sajatiya pravaha, a stream of noticing the truth about yourself. And when mind gets distracted, body, mind, world, vijatiya tiraskriti, pull the mind back and focus it back on the awareness that I am the spirit, I am Brahman. This is Niyama. So he replaces the entire range of practices, the Shaucha, Santosha, then the Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana, all of that he replaces by just a continuous stream of awareness of Aham Brahmasmi or Chidananda Rupa Shivoham or Sakshi Aham, whichever. And since they are Sajatiya, they need not be exactly the same time. If you are repeating a mantra, it must be exactly the same. Om Namah Shivaya, you cannot switch it to Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, then again come back to Om Namah Shivaya. You cannot do that. You have to repeat the same mantra again and again and again, exactly. But in this case, you don't have to keep on repeating Aham Brahmasmi. It's a fact. So you can notice the fact in different ways. They are all sajatiya, of the same jati, of the same kind. And just noticing the reality. So he says, Niyamo hi parananda. The Niyama, this is parananda, this is blissful. This is also a little bit of humor of Adi Shankaracharya. He knows when we are told Shaucha, Santosha, Tapasya, Tapaha, Ishvara Pranidhana, Swadhyaya, we find these practices boring. So we think, oh, I have to do tapasya, I have to study the scriptures. How long? How much should I study? When will it end? So this is because we do not enjoy it. We do not think it is joyful. Why should you wait for it to end? One Vaishnava teacher humorously said, these days when I tell people fasting and that you have to fast, the first question is, so what can I eat? Teaching is to fast. And the first immediate our reaction is we are anxious, tense. What is permitted to eat? No, these practices remaining as I am the witness consciousness, it is joyful. He says, Niyama parananda. Niyamat kriyate buddhi. Regularly the wise people stay in this. This is meditation. Staying in the knowledge I am Brahman. This is the greatest joy, greatest peace. Why would you want to say, how much should I practice? You never ask that. Regularly stay with this and enjoy it. I will do one more and then I will stop. 106. So we have done Yama, Niyama, one more. Tyagaha. Tyagaha. Shankaracharya says, Tyaga prapancha rupasya chedatmattvavalokanat tyago hi mahatam pujya sadyo mokshamayo yataha. The abandonment of the illusory universe by realizing it as the all-conscious Atman is the real renunciation honored by the great, since it is of the nature of immediate liberation. Very beautiful verse. Tyaga prapancha rupasya. Now, first of all, let us see what is the usual meaning of tyaga. Tyaga means renunciation. You become a sannyasi or a monk. It can start with renunciation of simple things. I don't want to eat that particular food item, or I'm giving up tyaga of I'm not smoking and drinking. I'm giving up those things. Some activities, some food items. So this is called tyaga. Now, if you make it global, I am becoming a sannyasi. So sannyasi is kama kanchana tyaga. All family connections, that I will no longer marry and have children and set up a family. I will no longer have personal possessions, wealth and property and house and car. No. So I give all of that up. I am a monk. Why? So that I can concentrate all my time and energy into spiritual practices. So that is called tyaga sannyasa. There is a general understanding of tyaga. Now here Shankaracharya is saying, not only giving up smoking and drinking, or not only giving up like a sannyasi, giving up family and wealth and all that. Give up the universe. Tyaga prapancha rupasya. Of the entire universe. How you give up the entire universe? How can you give up the entire universe? Even a monk, even the most austere monk staying in the mountains in Himalayas, is still in the Himalayas, is still inside this world, in this universe. How has he given up the world? Still has a body, still at least once in a day has to go and beg for food and eat. So how is it possible to give up the entire universe? Chidatmatva avalokanat. By seeing that this universe is nothing other than Chidatma, pure consciousness. I am pure consciousness and I alone appear as this universe. This is the renunciation of the entire universe. Here is a very beautiful story to illustrate it, which I'm very fond of, the story of the princess of Kashi. So the story goes like this. In ancient India, in some king's court, there was a dramatic performance, a theatrical performance. And in the theatrical performance, which was watched by the king and the queen and the ministers and all, and the courtiers, in that dramatic performance, one character was supposed to be the princess of Kashi. And the princess was supposed to be a little girl. So who will dress up as the little girl? That king and queen, they had a son, the prince, who was very young at that time, 5 years old. And the queen said, why not dress up my boy, the prince, as a little girl, and he will play the role of princess of Kashi. And that was done. The prince was dressed as a princess, and he looked so cute. His mother said, painter, make a painting of him in this dress. And these days you can take a selfie or a mobile, but those days a court painter had to be called and painted the prince in the dress of princess of Kashi. Anyhow, the dramatic performance was over. Years passed. 15 years later, that prince was grown up and doing all kinds of princely things. One day, he was exploring the palace. This prince, who is now 20 years old. And he goes to the basement of the palace and looking at old stuff. And he finds a painting, old painting. And he wipes the dust of it. And he sees, it says, Princess of Kashi. And this girl. And so he immediately falls in love with her. He says, she is my age. So this is 15 years ago, date is given. So at that time, he looks at that age. So now she must be of my age. I will marry this princess of Kashi and nobody else. Now he's shy, unable to tell his parents, but his father and mother, king and queen, they notice something is wrong. The boy has become very quiet, but they cannot understand what's going on. One day, an old minister, he corners the prince and says, what is wrong, O prince? You can confide in me. Tell me. And the prince says, I am in love. The minister says, very good. Who is the lucky girl? Oh, she is the princess. Princess, oh, very good. Then it's a fit match for you. Where is this princess? Who is this princess? Where did you meet her? I have not met her. She is the princess of Kashi. I found a picture of her, old picture of her, but she is my age. I will marry only her, otherwise I will not be happy. Then the minister, something jogs his memory and he says, Princess of Kashi, old painting. Can you show me the painting? And so they go downstairs into the basement of the palace, and the prince shows the painting to the minister. And the minister says, oh, I see, you need to sit down, prince. There's something I have to tell you. What? This is not the princess of Kashi. Oh, whoever it is, I will marry her. No, no, no. And then the minister tells the whole story of the dramatic performance which happened 15 years ago in the court, when he, the prince, was only 5 years old, how he was dressed as the princess of Kashi, how this painting was made. And he says, it's not the princess of Kashi, it is you, Tattvamasi. You are that. Now, the question is, what will happen to the desire of that prince for the princess of Kashi? That I want to marry the princess of Kashi, that desire will go away. But why does it go away? It does not go away because not that the princess of Kashi is married, so I cannot marry the princess of Kashi anymore, or the princess of Kashi is no longer there or does not exist. Not even that. The desire goes away because he realizes there is no princess of Kashi apart from him. What he was seeing there, I am myself am there. I am appearing in that form and tempting myself. Exactly in the same way, this entire universe is our princess of Kashi. Whether in temptation or in terror, whether in desire or in fear or anxiety, the other, so-called other, which is attracting us and repelling us and creating samsara, the moment the insight comes, chidatmatva avalokana, the insight comes, this is pure consciousness, I, the pure consciousness, am appearing. This is my reflection. This is the princess of Kashi. I am the prince who dressed up as the princess of Kashi. In that case, there is nothing here, nobody here, good and bad, which is other than me. So this non-dual realization, I, the consciousness, and the non-dual reality, which means there is no second reality apart from me. So once this realization comes, this is tyaga, tyaga prapancha rupasya. This is the greatest tyaga, the greatest renunciation. You can still be in the midst of the world, you can still be the prince and do the princely duties and carry on with life. You can be Arjuna in the middle of Kurukshetra war, but you realize the entirety is one consciousness, which I am. Then there is no more pull and push of aversion and attraction, raga dvesha, of hatred and desire. So one is liberated. This is called the highest renunciation. Sadhyo mokshamaya yataha, immediate moksha. Of course, the traditional idea of tyaga, becoming sannyasi, will that lead to immediate moksha? No. If one is a good spiritual practitioner, good sannyasi, in this life one may hope for moksha, or it may take many lifetimes. But here, this realization that chidatmatva avalokana, whatever I experience is I, the pure consciousness. This is the same realization as aham brahmasmi. And that itself leads to moksha. That itself is the nature of moksha, moksha swarupa. So Shankaracharya here, you see how he dives into the idea of tyagaha and shows the deepest meaning of renunciation. It's not the external renunciation of the sannyasi. One may, after this tyaga, one may continue to be sannyasi, one may continue to be householder. Remember, in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna was a householder and Arjuna was a householder. And this highest teaching was given by Krishna to Arjuna. And after the Bhagavad Gita teaching, also both continued to be householders and also engage in the worldly activities, the duties in the world. And yet, Shankaracharya says, who is himself a monk, he says, that is the highest tyaga, because they realize that all is chidatma, consciousness. So in this way, to summarize, in these 15 practices, Adi Shankaracharya, in every step, he is changing the meaning of the original yogic terms, some derived from Patanjali Yoga, some from other Hatha Yoga texts, and then bringing them back to one meaning, the central insight of Advaita Vedanta called Brahmakara Vritti, Aham Brahmasmi Tyakara Vritti, that I am Brahman. This realization, bringing it back again and again in 15 different ways. And he says, this will lead to Vedantic meditation, Nididhyasana. And let's not forget, what is the purpose of Vedantic meditation? It is to assimilate the knowledge already gained. You have gained knowledge through Shravana. You have gained clarity through Manana, removing the doubts. And now this absolutely clear knowledge, this conviction must be translated into a living realization through Nididhyasana. Contrary tendencies, the tendency of behaving like an individual with body-mind, that is removed by this Nididhyasana. So I thought I would just present this on this memorable occasion. I am sure Yardi ji would have thoroughly enjoyed this comparison between Advaitic idea of meditation and the yogic conception of meditation. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. I think the next is Akshay
Yes,
will
thank you,
take over the
Swamiji.
Q&A. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. So I've received a couple of questions. I'd like to open up the chat to any Q&A. You can direct message me at Akshay Rao on the Zoom. You can put your chat in for everyone to see as well. And we'll have a few questions. Swamiji, while you were speaking, I got 2 questions, if I may start with those.
Please.
The first question is, the 3 steps are Shravana, or study, Manana, or inquiry leading to removal or doubts, and then the Nididhyasana,
Nididhyasana,
a repeated meditation of truth. So the question is, how do we start, and you talked about this a bit, but how do we start on this path in the modern context, and what are some recommendations you have?
Yes. Jnana Yoga has these 3 components: the path of knowledge, Shravana, which is you study the texts. By texts, I mean the foundational texts of Advaita Vedanta, which are the Upanishads. Primarily, the 10 Upanishads, 11 if you include Shvetashvatara, which were selected by Adi Shankaracharya to write the commentaries on. So you study the Upanishads with the commentaries. But before that, one may, to get a bird's eye view of the entire teaching, one may study books like this, the Aparokṣānubhūti, for example. Aparokṣānubhūti, Atma Bodha, the Vakya Vritti, Viveka Chudamani, Vedanta Sara, Drigdrishya Viveka, or if you're a little more ambitious, Panchadashi. And it's not that it's an endless syllabus of books to be covered. Or each of these books, even the smallest of the books, they give you the essential teaching. Whatever each book tells you, all the others tell you the same thing. And from study of these introductory texts called Prakarana Granthas, one can go on to the study of the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita also. And if possible, with the help of a teacher. If the teacher is not directly available, one can take the help. But nowadays on YouTube and on podcasts and all, entire texts have been taught nicely. So one can do that. And very good books are now published with nice translations into English and other languages, Indian and international language, other languages also. So this is Shravana. A guidance of a teacher is highly recommended. Otherwise, one might misunderstand. Then when we study this, we will end up with doubts. So there's a difference between reading a book or listening to a lecture, and then the next step would be that, have I got it? The first step is, I hear you. I know what the book says, but then I have a lot of questions. So that lot of questions, there's those doubts, they have to be clarified, because knowledge infected with doubts is not knowledge. It's just doubt. So questioning is done at the stage of manana. So that you do along with the study. It's not that you finish reading so many books and then you sit down to think. As we read, so we think. Just like you go to a class in a university. Through this process of studying and thinking about it, one gets a clarity. Very soon we will come to the feeling that I have understood it. Then we will feel the need for nididhyasana. I've understood it, but it's not a living reality for me. It's like a theory, like a nice philosophy. So nididhyasana is these techniques I was talking about today. Now, before we do that, Advaita, I must say this, Advaita Vedanta always begins with sadhana chatushtaya, a certain moral, ethical perfection. So viveka, discernment between eternal and non-eternal. We have it to some extent, we must improve it, we must intensify it. Vairagya, a dispassion from worldliness. Then Shat Sampatti, the 6-fold disciplines or treasures which have to be practiced and cultivated. The 6 are Shama, a quietude of mind. Calmness of mind is necessary for any kind of higher intellectual pursuit, let alone spirituality. It's very necessary. Damaha, a control of the senses. Then Titiksha, a toughness. So to attain anything in this world, including spiritual realization, one needs to be tough, one-minded, focused, single-minded, so that problems to the world will throw problems at us. Sometimes there'll be illness, you don't feel too good. Sometimes people misbehave with you. Sometimes it's too hot or too cold. But I must focus that my Vedantic study and meditation should go on in spite of all problems. So that is titiksha, toughness. spiritual fortitude. And then Uparati, withdrawal from too much engagement with the world. So if you continuously, say I'm in Manhattan, the whole philosophy here is 5 days a week, you earn lots of money, and then in the weekend you party. If one does that continuously, very little time is left over for Vedanta. So Uparati is a little withdrawal from too much engagement with the world. Then Samadhana, focus. When you're withdrawn, you have got time and energy, you focus on Vedanta, on spiritual practices. And then Shraddha, a kind of working faith that I don't get it right now, but what these texts are telling me, there's something very worthwhile. I was just listening to Aditi ji speaking about how they learned from Yardi ji. It's not so much from conversation, by watching these people, the life that they led, a saintly life, a very inward focused life of spiritual practice and cultivation. So there's something worthwhile here. That's the sense you get by reading these texts or looking at such people, in the lives of such people. So that is called Shraddha. I don't get it yet, but I think it's really worthwhile. And then there is there's mumukshutvam, intense desire for freedom from suffering. So this is the beginning. This is how you begin Vedanta. It sounds like a lot, but actually we have many of these qualities already. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on this path.
Wonderful. So received a second question. Yoga and Vedanta teach us how to look inwards, in a sense, how to disengage, as you just said, and look inward. What do they say about looking outward and engaging with the things that surround us in an appropriate way?
Notice the spiritual life always has these two components. One is you go away, and second one, you come back. So Vedanta especially is a very much, it gives you the strength and a philosophy to live and act in the world, to be in the world but not of it, like a boat in water. The boat is in the water, but the water is not in the boat. Similarly, so notice Krishna, when he teaches Arjuna, he teaches Arjuna in a battlefield, in the midst of action. I think that's why the Gita has been situated in the battlefield in Kurukshetra. So this is a philosophy which helps us to live life. Whether you are an administrator, a professor, a householder, a student, whichever age we are, which gender we are, which place we are in the United States or India or elsewhere, in all these circumstances, what is that which gives us being centered and being strong, peaceful, unaffected by the ups and downs of the world and being engaged in the world? So Vedanta does that. How does Vedanta do it? Notice, when we read all this, it seems like you're engaging from, disengaging from the world. You're pulling back in meditation, turning inwards. But next, when Vedanta says, it is the same consciousness everywhere. So when you come out and look at it, you don't look at the world as something you have to disengage from. Vedanta ultimately means with eyes closed and with eyes open, you see the same reality. Without engaging in action, without talking, sitting inwards, not acting, not talking, not thinking, focused in meditation inwards, same Vedanta. Open your eyes, see the world, engaged in action, live a life of helpfulness and blessedness, same Vedanta. So that's the beauty of the Vedantic philosophy. In the midst of all activities, this philosophy makes your life a blessing to yourself and you become a blessing to everybody else around you.
Excellent. Thank you, Swamiji. We've got one question that came in on chat. What role should the guru play in Advaita or any other way for moksha in Jivan Mukta? So how should the guru play a role?
Yes, a guru is very important in these systems because these are knowledge systems. So in the transmission of knowledge, the teacher is very important. That's why you see an overwhelming importance given to the guru. So the idea in Vedanta is God or Brahman, Saguna Brahman, Ishvara, alone is the guru. It is Satchidananda Brahman who comes in the form of the guru. It's not that the human guru is God. Rather, God is coming through the channel of the human guru. And Sri Ramakrishna gave a very beautiful example. His old houses, you have to imagine the palaces or old colonial houses where you have these water spouts. So some of them look like lions, some of them look like demons. And but the rainwater collects on the roof and it flows out through these spouts. Similarly, The teaching comes from one source, which is the Upanishads, which is Brahman. But through the different mouths means the different teachers. The same teaching is coming from the same source. This is the idea of the Guru in Vedanta. The Guru will guide, inspire and guide the student. The Guru has to be Shrotriya Akamahata Brahmanishta, which means the Guru first of all has to be a master of the tradition. If it's Advaita Vedanta, Guru has to be a master of Advaita Vedanta. Otherwise, what can he or she transmit? The Guru has to be Akamahata. There should not be any other motivation. The Guru should not be out to make a lot of money in transmitting Vedantic teachings, or not out to get power or position. It should only be giving this knowledge which will lead to the highest benefit of the student. So Akamahata, not damaged or distorted by desire. And then Brahmanishta. The Guru also must be a spiritual established in Brahman. If his Guru is fully enlightened, that's wonderful. That's the best. But we can't know who is enlightened or not. But at least we can know whether this person is completely committed to spiritual life. Is this person a part-time spiritual teacher, or the whole life is about God realization? So Guru should be somebody who is completely dedicated to spirituality or God realization, centered in Brahman, Brahmanishta. So this is a Guru.
Wonderful.
So I think we should wrap up. Yes.
Yeah. I think we have one last question, and maybe a good way to wrap up, Swamiji, which is,
yes,
given that 3 of the steps of the 15 steps were covered, any guidance on where we can get more information on the remaining steps?
Actually, if you look up on YouTube, I have taught the entire text. It's highly recommended that you begin at the beginning. In this talk, we began at the end, the last practices, the culmination. It's good to go to the beginning and work your way down to the final steps. So if you search for Aparokṣānubhūti, Sarvapriyananda on YouTube, you will get a series of 44 lectures which are available. So start with lecture number 1 and get the book, this Aparokṣānubhūti. I recommend this translation by Swami Vimuktānandaji. It's published by Advaita Ashrama. Yes, Advaita Ashrama. And easily available. It's an inexpensive book. And then listen to the talks. All the 15 steps are covered in detail. Yes.
Wonderful. Swamiji, thank you so much. And thank you for
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Very grateful. And I can turn it back, or otherwise I think we can end the talk. And so Swamiji, thank you so much again for your time.
Thanks indeed, Swamiji. In fact, Aparokṣānubhūti, and in Marathi, the word Aparokṣa means the one that is not before your eyes, but in Sanskrit, it means that one that is before your eyes. So it was indeed great to have an Aparokṣa, though online, but still an Aparokṣa experience of your enlightening lecture. And it was very simple, and we really know how difficult it is to be simple and lucid, like how you did it. I also thank the Yardi family, the members of the Yardi family, and the well-wishers of the Mandakar Institute who are present here on this occasion. And this is also to thank Aditi Saxena and Akshay, who helped the proceedings of this lecture. We are extremely sorry for the network failure, for which we were really helpless. But our technical team was requested to seek the possibility of recording the remaining of the lecture in audio, and it is learned that they have been successful in doing that. So we will have something of the lecture, if not everything, and it will remain available with us. So I thank all the participants, the Yardi family again, and Swamiji, you. We are really blessed with your gracious presence here. Thank you. Thank you very much.